Rien ne permet d'affirmer qu'il s'agit de mes hommes.
Ça peut être n'importe qui.
On a plusieurs témoins.
Ils mentent. Pourquoi ils mentirait?
Olofsson. Janne Olsson heter jag.
There's another body. All the same suspects. But this time, Sully, I'm gonna go all the way.
Hello and welcome to the show where we're tightening the focus on the best on the small screen this month. And our TV critic, Dheepthika Laurent, joins us for that. Hi, Deepthi.
Hi, Olivia.
Now, there has been a rich selection of foreign language TV dramas, from a Netflix Swedish biopic about the gangster who gave rise to the expression Stockholm Syndrome to Apple TV Plus's newest Spanglish crime drama. But we're starting closer to home here in France, a new French show out on Disney Plus about Malik Oussekine, a figure who's become something of a George Floyd person here in France. Explain a bit more about this.
Well, that's right. Malik Oussekine, just like George Floyd, is a name sadly synonymous with police brutality here in France. It's an old case. It's over 35 years old, Olivia. It dates back to 1986. Back then, the French government was proposing a very deeply unpopular bill to reform French universities. It was known as a Dheepthika Laurent. As a result, France saw a period of student protesting, often leading to violence with the police. One night in December 1986, Malik Oussekine, who was then a 22-year-old student, was not involved in the protests. He was just going home after a concert when he was beaten to death by police officers.
And it's certainly something that's been on people's minds recently because, as you mentioned, those events have also been revisited by director Rachid Bouchareb. He made a film about that called Nos Frangins, or Our Brothers. That just made its debut at the Cannes Film Festival. But coming back to this series, let's take a look at the Disney Plus version of those events. This is Oussekine.
Je l'ai vu, maman. Ils l'ont massacré.
Pourquoi? Ils vont pas me rendre mon fils. On n'attend pas qu'ils nous rendent Malik. On attend qu'ils nous rendent justice, moi.
Justice pour Malik!
Well, you know, Olivia, there are some real heavyweights behind this show. It was actually directed by Antoine Chevrolier, who directed episodes of Le Bureau des Légendes. Oussekine, the character, is actually played by a relative newcomer. His name is Saïd Al-Alami, but his grieving mother is played by someone who's very familiar to TV fans. Her name is Hiam Abbas. You'll recognize her as, of course, Marsha Roy from Succession. Kad Merad, who's really, a legend of French cinema. Well, he plays Malik Oussekine's lawyer. Slimane Fazi portrays his father in flashbacks. Well, he spoke to France 24 about the show. Take a listen.
This show represents a tragic moment in the history of France's post-colonial era, the period following Algeria's War of Independence, and in general, depicting France's first generation of children born to immigrants, of which I am a part of. It's important that this show was made, but there's part of me that feels disappointed. Disappointed that this was a foreign production and that in 35 years, not a single French production mustered the courage or came up with the idea to bring this story to light.
So it's certainly a stellar cast there, but what are your thoughts on the series?
Well, you know what? Two things struck me about this series. First of all, it's really sad. You know, that the material is sad. The death of Malik Oussekine is so violent, and it just feels like he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the other thing that's really striking is how French society, sadly, doesn't feel a lot different between then and now. I mean, the Oussekines were they're Algerian immigrants, but Malik and his siblings in the series, while they feel inherently French, they're often made to feel that they're not, or they're reminded of their immigrant origins. You know, it deals with racism, immigration, police brutality, mistrust towards the police, social anger. You know, it could well be 2022. From a cinematic point of view, the night of his death is reconstructed over the 4 episodes of the miniseries, and that's a really interesting technique because there's a real sense of build-up. which really intensifies how tragic his death was. And there's what I really liked was that there was an incredible sense of balance in the show. It's never moralizing. It's never sensational either. There are some lulls, though, in the show. You know, there are moments where it's a bit slow. And it's a shame, really, that we don't get to see a lot of the actor who portrayed Malik Oussekine.
Now, we're staying with real-life events here to someone who was Sweden's most notorious and charming criminal. This is the true story of Swedish gangster Clark Olofsson. It's been brought to life on the small screen by Netflix.
Well, Clark Olofsson is Sweden's most notorious criminal to date. He terrorized the country, really, in the 1970s and 1980s with bank heists, robberies, assaults, prison breaks, and drug trafficking. In this new Netflix show called Clark, the character is portrayed by Bill Skarsgård. Take a look.
Olofsson. Janne Olsson heter jag.
Norrmalmstorgsdramat. Det som gjorde mig till superkändis.
Fan, det låter ju som att de har kul.
Och jag vet att jag är en jävla galning. Och jag försöker.
So there's a particular focus in the show on a 1973 Stockholm bank holdup where kidnapper Jan-Erik Olsson demanded, among other things, that his prison buddy Clark Olofsson joins him. The two men and their hostages were holed up in the bank for 6 days. One of the hostages reportedly fell in love with Clark Olofsson. This is how we got the term Stockholm Syndrome, and that's really been, you know, one of Netflix's selling points for the show, because really we didn't know, at least I didn't know who this person was until they sold it on the fact that he gave rise to that expression. Olivia.
And indeed, looking at the trailer, there's something a bit glamorous about that. I suppose there has been some criticism about perhaps romanticizing this charismatic criminal who fundamentally did terrible things.
Well, I actually really wanted to know how accurate the show was, because granted, it is based on his memoir, so the point of view is very personal. But I spoke to Per Hermanrud. He's a Swedish criminal journalist. He explains a bit more about this personality. Take a listen.
Clark Olofsson is probably the most famous or infamous criminal during the last decades in Sweden. Is some kind of a legend. I know people who knew him, who used to go to school with him, and who actually know him as a person. And they say it's a rather good portrait of him as a person. But, this glad, happy chap, nothing is impossible and all that.
Now, Olivia, just bouncing off what Per said, to be fair, Netflix did have a disclaimer before each episode saying it was a blend of fact and fiction. My issue, though, is the way that Netflix appears to sort of apologize for a man who essentially was a really, really big criminal, and the way that he appears manipulative but vulnerable, charming and repulsive. And if you look at sort of Netflix's history, they really do make a habit out of romanticizing criminal protagonists. Think of Casa de Papel,
course, yeah.
That's one of the biggest shows to date. I also think of Pablo Escobar in Narcos, and for me, Clark is really sort of joining in that kind of list of romanticizing criminals.
Their brand of factutainment, we
Exactly.
could say. Well, next we're going to something from Apple TV+. It's a bilingual crime thriller named Now and Then. This is a slick 8-part drama featuring a group of 6 college friends. There's a tragic accident and then the consequences of that accident 20 years later. Tell us a bit more.
That's right. It's a Spanglish crime drama set in Miami. 6 college friends celebrating their graduation on a beach. One of them ends up dead, along with another woman, and the other 5 sort of cover it up. Fast forward to 20 years later, and the 5 friends, who are now mostly successful adults, receive a mysterious blackmail text message.
Okay, well, let's take a look at that group dynamic in Now and Then.
Remember our first case together? The one we couldn't solve? There's another body. All the same suspects. But this time, Sully, I'm gonna go all the way. You didn't take the blackmail seriously?
Why wouldn't we? We haven't done anything wrong.
You want a warrant to bug the mayoral candidate. You want to go to war with those guys?
Well, you know, some of the episodes were directed by Gideon Raff, of course, is creator of the Israeli spy series Hatufin, which also inspired the hit US show Homeland.
Well, overall, what did you make of it then? Should we catch this one?
Look, it's a solid drama. It's good suspense. It's got a jaw-dropping penultimate episode twist that I definitely didn't see coming. The concept of a Spanglish show is also very clever. It sort of pays tribute also to the migrant communities who are a huge part of Miami where the show is set. Look, for me, though, it does tend to fall into some cliches. The dogged cop who's haunted by her first case. We've seen that before. The drug-addled rich son supported by his father, friends turning on each other. But this is really entertainment. This is not a kind of a show where it's not hard-hitting, but it's entertainment. So if you take it like that, I think you'll definitely enjoy it.
Okay, good tip. Now, finally from you, something from the director of Slumdog Millionaire, Danny Boyle. This is a mini-series called Pistol.
That's right. It's a Disney Plus miniseries called Pistol. It's a deep dive into 1970s London. It traces the brief, but of course, unforgettable rise and fall of the Sex Pistols in the 1970s. It's actually based on Sex Pistols guitarist Steve Jones's memoir. It's made up of a relatively unknown and young cast, which is quite nice. There is, of course, Maisie Williams, who plays Jordan Mooney, who was a woman who played a big part, actually, in the Sex Pistols image. However, the series is not without its detractors. The Sex Pistols lead singer John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten, actually slammed the show before it even came out on his website. He said there that he did not endorse or support the series, nor did he have any involvement in with the actor portraying him.
Oh, okay. Well, that's quite funny because Johnny Rotten's been in the headlines recently for the re-release of that single God Save the Queen for the Queen's Jubilee. He was okay about revisiting history there, but not in this series. Deepthi, what did you make of it overall?
Look, it's gorgeous to watch. It's really fun. You're really plunged right into the heart of a decade marked by rebellion. It's also quite a nice reminder that every generation's youth think that they're the ones who will change the world, that they're agitating for change, they're angry at the establishment. In any case, it's definitely a must for music lovers.
Okay, thanks for that roundup, Deepthi. We'll take those bits of advice on board and we'll leave you to judge that series for yourselves with this clip of Pistol, which is out on Disney Plus this month. Remember, you can get more arts and culture on our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
We're going to kick this country awake if it kills us.
The monarchy has stolen our future.
The fury of the forgotten generation.
It's time for youth revolution.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
I want to burn this city to the ground.
I don't want musicians, I want saboteurs, assassins.
One word.
Destroy.
They observe. They contact us. They report, film, photograph. They are the voice of the voiceless. Your eyes in the far-flung reaches of the world. The Observers, a network of 5,000 committed citizens working with France 24.
One of our observers in Côte d'Ivoire, Gaspard.
Amateur footage and testimonials checked by our journalists and broadcast weekly on The Observers, on France 24 and observers.france24.com.